And welcome back into Main Event Sports TV Live. Is going down here, 1201 South 1st Street.
Let's do something a little bit different with this segment. Now, normally, like right before the game, we like to give out our predictions, who's going to win, who's going to lose, what's going to happen. But because it's been kind of done live, and most people don't see it on YouTube until like after the game.
Yes.
Let's kind of give our thoughts on who they thought was the best team, who got shafted, and what they look forward to seeing next year in the tournament, or what changes would you like to see in this year's tournament to make next year better, and to what I would like to see happen like next year in the tournament.
Okay.
And I would like to see a whole scale, how can I put this, just a gutting of all women's college basketball officials need to be fired immediately and replaced with anybody from the Kentucky School for the Blind. Because the officiating in women's college basketball is atrocious. If you watch the Louisville game, the fouls called between Louisville and Mississippi State were just horrible. They were horrible on both sides.
Oh, both games.
I mean, just like both sides, the fouls are horrible.
In the Final Four.
Obvious walks. I mean, it was just bad. It was bad. It was so bad it actually really affected the end of the game, especially the national championship game with Michigan State and Notre Dame. When Michigan State gets to steal, the girl from Notre Dame runs across her body and does one of these and try to poke the ball out. No foul. No foul at all. I mean, just like, they get the ball back, run the other way. No, I mean, you can't let that happen.
I mean, Tara McCowan almost suplexed Hines Allen.
Yeah, Hines Allen going there.
She almost suplexed her.
Her second foul, Hines Allen's second foul of the game.
Through the table like a rock bottom.
I know, like the Dudley boys. 3D! 3D!
It was terrible.
It was terrible. And that's, to me, that's the thing that hurts the most. Why is officiating so bad in women's college basketball? If it's going to be that bad, why not just use the same refs for both? Because that was just, I mean, it's just atrocious.
I agree with you.
It is just horrible.
And I tell you what, one change, while you're talking about that, I loved the rules that they use, the experimental rules they used in the NIT.
It's timeout. I'm going to stop it right there. First of all, why are these experimental rules when every other basketball league plays by those same rules? Only men's college basketball has halves. Makes no sense whatsoever. Makes no sense. Little league, quarters. Middle school basketball, quarters. High school basketball, quarters. Women's college basketball, quarters. NBA, quarters. Men's college basketball, halves. No, that makes no sense.
The only game in the world that still has halves is men's college basketball, NCAA.
For what reason? Why is it experimental? Like, why need to test this out? It's proven to work.
Yeah, I mean, the quarter system, I love. I like the fact that you go right into the fouls reset at the end of every quarter, and you just get the 2 free throws. You don't get penalized with the 1-and-1. I like that. I like the wider lane they use the NBA width on the lane to kind of open up the driving lanes and not have it so congested. And then, of course, they went to the international three-point line. I like that as well. I think that all those things help the game. They're trying to go towards this freedom of movement and trying to unify the game around the globe. I do. I think that they should go to pretty much the international game. Now, they aren't going with the whole goaltend where you can, the ball can hit, once it hits the rim, you can smack it off. That's kind of weird anyway, so I'm okay with them not doing that. But all the other rules, I think they should definitely.
To me, the wider lanes are a must, especially when players are taller, they're longer. On college basketball, it's just too easy just to stack the paint and neutralize who's ever the 5 spot.
Yeah.
You can easily neutralize who's ever the 5 by stacking the paint. And it makes it too easy. But with the wider lanes, if you have a real big man, he can actually move. He actually put in work.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, I just think that it opens it up. I'm tired of seeing guys like Donovan Mitchell and great athletes have to contend. I mean, Donovan Mitchell talked about the fact of how much easier it was for him to play in the NBA than it was in college because you didn't have 4 guys sitting in the paint waiting for you because you have this itty-bitty little lane and they can just basically squeeze everybody in there to make sure there's no driving lanes. I thought that was very interesting.
Crazy.
Now, I do want to ask, just as far as college basketball as a whole, and the NCAA tournament as a whole, Alan, I'm going to ask you first. What was your biggest takeaway? What is your I don't know if you want to call it one shining moment, or what's the thing that sticks out the most to you about this year's tournament?
I think the gap's closing with the talent level with the guys. You're really starting to see a big difference with, freshman-led teams. You're like your Dukes and Kentucky, who neither made the Final Four, and experienced teams like a Villanova, a Loyola. These teams that have the experience play. The gap is closing where it doesn't really matter about the one and dones anymore, because it's kind of being proven, the track record showing you're not going to win a national title with a team full of one and done. It looks good on paper, lots of highlights, but it's not there. The proof ain't in the pudding. Cal's got one ship in 9 years. Coach K will be doing the same thing next year, trotting out a whole new freshman starting five, and pressure will be back on. Hitting that reset button's a lot harder than what these coaches have made it look.
Now, let me ask you something as a follow-up to that. We have Darius Baisley, the big man that was supposed to head to Syracuse, announced he's going to go straight to the G League. He's going to play a year in the G League before he goes pro. First of all, what do you think about that? Do you think that's going to start to be more prominent? Some people say he's the first guy to go straight to the G League. That's actually false. There was a young man that a couple years ago went straight from high school to the G League and then ended up getting drafted into the second round. His name escapes me, but I know that Baisley's not the first guy to attempt this. A, do you think that this will become more prominent? And B, do you think that this whole conversation of doing a two or none, where guys either go to school for 2 years and then go pro, or they go straight out of high school, do you think we'll see any of those two things coming very soon? And do you think that these kids making this jump to the G League is a reality?
I think the kid, Terrence Ferguson, might have been the one you were speaking of. He's with the Thunder now.
Yeah, Terrence Ferguson actually went overseas
and
played. But, yes, he did
he
also
worked his way up through the G League before playing in NBA. But on Darius Baisley, I actually watched him when he played against Romeo Langford on TV, a little familiar with him. He's from the Ohio area. And Baisley, I don't think it's going to be a trend. My opinion is, more power for him if he's that focused and that's where he wants to spend his 1 year prior to he can enter the NBA draft.
Right.
But I can't think of a better place for him to grow than would have been. And yes, it's a safe call to go play at Syracuse under Boeheim in the 2-3 zone. But what 6'9" wouldn't make it with guard skills out of that system and be a one and done? So I think, maybe long run it helps him. I don't think it'll start a trend because the money's not that good. And as we know, they've been getting paid off the floor. So the money, there's not enough money to make up. I believe it's like $26,000 is the number, the dollar figure. So for him, it's not for every kid. So in that aspect, I don't think it's going to start a huge trend unless they can, unless the NBA, which they are starting to do, getting behind the G League and boosting it and getting more, funding for it and kind of really promoting it as a minor league. But and secondly, here soon, I think they're going to have to go back to letting the kids go to the league straight out of high school, the ones, but they have to put some buffer in there just so kids don't fall straight on their face if, they're getting bad advice and bad guidance from someone, because all it could be is a uncle who's leading your whole camp and telling you, you the best, go pro. And some kids will do it. We've seen it in the past. A lot of those guys not make it. But like touching back on that, that's where I think the NBA can come in and have a real big impact and boosting that G League and making it a viable minor league system where kids want to go and play. Yeah, all that.
Okay. Now, Josh, let me ask you, what is your biggest takeaway? What was there a team, a player, a moment that kind of struck the biggest thing for you in the tournament? What's like the biggest thing that you'll remember about?
I'm going to go with actually the women's tournament. The women's tournament, actually, I was more connected into the women's tournament because it was competitive. Every single Final Four game was competitive. It came down to a game-winning shot, and the composure from coaches and players, because these young ladies are actually staying 3-4 years. It's different than the men's game when you got a lot of guys that's ready to jump ship after 1 year. From the men's tournament, I really think that the selection committee has to take more time and really do a better job with selecting, these teams when it comes down the line to have more competitive tournament and things like that. For a Final Four game, when I watch a Final Four game, I want to see a competitive basketball game, not Villanova go off for 18 three-pointers in a game. And I thought Kansas was a really good team, but they just ran into a team that was really hungry and really wanting to go far. And it's because they're staying 3 years. They have juniors. They have, redshirt juniors, which is really 4-year players and things like that. I really love the coaching, from Jay Wright to John Beeline, and same thing with the women's tournament as well with Jeff Waltz and I forget his name, Gino Oriema. I forget his name sometime. It's a tongue twister. But just from that aspect of things, the selection of the tournament and things like that, even like a Oklahoma State who didn't get in the tournament, Louisville who didn't get in the tournament, those are tournament teams that would have made more competitive basketball games, in my opinion. So,
no doubt. Now let me ask you, just as far as if they do decide to go to letting these kids go back straight pro out of high school, do you think that makes the game better? Or do you think that kind of – because I personally believe that while the one and done has been great, I think that it's actually brought a lot more teams into it, because a lot of these teams are so young that a lot of times, like we saw with Kentucky, they get into these situations. It's their first time going through it, and you can kind of take advantage of that. I think that if you go to this two or none, that might put the halves back on top. Do you think this is good for college basketball, bad for college basketball, or do you think that it really won't make a difference? You think that these smaller schools, it seems like the smaller schools that want to be here to stay, will that hurt it if they go to this 2 and none system?
If they allow the players to go straight out of high school, I think it's actually good, because the ones that want to go to college is going to go to college for 2, 3, 4 years, not just to get an education, but then they get better. The competition gets better. You look at somebody like Trey Young or DeAndre Ayton. As soon as the game was over, they announced that they're leaving. So it's one of those things of where, you came to play ball for 6 months, and now you're leaving. So I believe it'll be good for the game, for families and for the kids itself, because they're going for a purpose. They're either going to graduate or they're going for 2, 3, 4 years at a time, to play, and the game gets better and the competition is better and each player gets better. So when they do go to the NBA, they're actually a man. They're 21, 22 years old. Their body is getting there. Their game is getting there, and they can actually come and they can play. So I think it's good.
Hey, no, that's true. And you know what? It's interesting that he brought up Trey Young, because Trey Young was a guy who he would have been at least a 2-year player if under the 2 and none rule, because nobody thought that Trey Young was going to be a guy who made that jump. So Oklahoma would have had that talent for at least 2 years.
Man, that was like –
that's crazy.
Like Trey Young was like this year's Ben Simmons. Like that's all ESPN talked about was Trey Young this, Trey Young that.
No player in college basketball history since they started keeping the statistic had ever led the nation in both points and assists. Trey Young did that this year as a freshman.
Crazy.
That's amazing.
Now, next up, I don't know if you guys on the video have been seeing me talking to this gentleman next to me. What I'm about to introduce you to next is the greatest quarterback ever to come out of Fern Creek High School. The greatest quarterback ever to come out of Fern Creek. My man, the blind swordsman himself. I give you my man, Daryl. Daryl, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good, brother.
All right, man. So let me ask you a question, Daryl. What was your favorite moment of the NCAA tournament so far?
Oh, the team Chicago Loyola Mount? No,
Loyola Chicago. Uh-huh.
Chicago Loyola. Yeah, where they upset teams and then the sister and this and that. And
Sister
then
Jean.
that next to Kentucky getting knocked out of the tournament. So, yeah, those are my 2 greatest moments.
That's a great moment every year, isn't it?
The blind swordsman speaks. Now, while you're over there, let me ask you a little question. Now, we all know that you're like one that I have to ask you about this, because our producer Jay was your teammate.
Oh, yes.
He was your teammate, but how good were you
Me?
as Fern Creek's greatest quarterback?
Ooh. Hey, well, I was a pioneer. I was a triple threat. I could throw, pass, and I can hand it off. Tricky with the handoff, the pitching. So I call myself a triple threat.
Jay had said he was like Jamel Holloway. Yeah, for all my old school football
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, you're right,
He
right.
was the man. He said
Well,
you was explosive.
Yeah, right. 75 yards, one touch, I can take it in a minute.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But Jamel Holloway and my man Haas, we go in the locker room. Durrell recruited by Oklahoma, but, I could have went some junior colleges out there where Oklahoma did want me. They was interested in me and stuff like that, run that wishbone, that option. But I could throw the ball. I could spin it. But it's a lot. Louisville area is some good football now.
A lot of talent.
It's a lot against Chris West. What's my man from Wagner? Rodney Stroud. Yeah, it's a lot of great guys. You know what I'm saying? Afro-Americans can play it. I played in the 80s and stuff like that, but we can throw the ball. We can run with it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody always talks about all the talent they had on the basketball court back in them days. There's a lot of football talent out there, too.
Plenty.
There you go. Hey, you heard from himself, the blind swordsman. Now, you guys seen this man, like, literally every show he's been sitting at the bar. So we decided we had to bring the blind swordsman over and get him on the air.
That's right.
Because our man, because the man's always cracking jokes over in the corner, but I'm telling you.
Him and Jay stay over there cutting up.
I know, right? You can see him.
That's my little brother. Yeah, we go way back.
That's what's up, man. Yeah. Appreciate you coming on the show, sir.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
Okay, anytime you want to talk to me, I'll be here.
There we go.
That's right. That's right.
Down.
So, you know what? Before we wrap this up, I want to talk to my man, Mr. Houston, over here for a second. Now, before we go, man, let us know where we can hear your podcast, man. And tell us about the dudes, man.
Man, appreciate that. 35KY Sports. You can check it out on iTunes Library, SoundCloud as well. You can look it up, 35th Kentucky Sports website, www.35KY Sports. Lots of coverage from here locally, whether it's prep school. Went up to Indiana Golden Gloves, former card Mario Urrutia in action in his Golden Gloves debut. We just try to get in the mix everywhere, giving you a little taste of what's going on that might not get covered to the extent it needs to.
Absolutely.
That's what's up. And Josh, intern, you have anything you want to say as a parting shot?
Just thankful to be here. Glad to be back with the team and things like that, and hope to help out anywhere needed. You
know what? I want to congratulate Josh on getting married 2 years ago. Even though I'm just now finding out today he got married 2 years ago, but we still love him anyway. But I let you know how much he likes to call and text people. He's been married for 2 years, lives down the street, haven't heard a word from him. But we still love him anyway. Crisp and clean. We love you, man. We love you, for real. You haven't heard from me in 2 years, apparently. Got any kids or anything I don't know about?
No,
okay, just make sure, man. You sure? All right, okay, cool. Ain't been arrested, gone to jail, anything? Are you straight? All right, good, okay. I just want to make sure we got you covered. You haven't heard from me in 2 years, so a lot of things happen in 2 years.
That's harsh. Hey, you know what? I just want to thank everybody for coming out, man. We've had so many great guests on. My man George Fields came through. We have our esteemed panel here. David James came through as well.
The blind swordsman himself still here.
Yeah, that's right. We got the blind swordsman.
Has a sword right here.
Yeah, love y'all. You know what I'm saying? So it's been an amazing night. It's worthy of Championship Monday. Now we're going to settle in, watch what happens on this court. And you know what? After tonight's game, we can start getting ready for Louisville basketball 2018-2019. I'm down with that.
No. After this game, it's football season.
What? There we go.
What?
I'm sorry.
It's football season. That's what I'm talking about.
Puma era.
NFL draft. What? Spring practice. Come on now.
Man, no one cares about football. Football's supposed to get you ready for basketball season.
You must be crazy.
That's
on crack.
That's it. Nah, that's it. But
about the blind swordsman touch you up a couple of times.
Hey, don't forget, man. Come down here, 1201 South 1st Street, Old Louisville Pizza Pub. Not just on Mondays. Definitely want you to come down Mondays here from 7 to 8. Plus, whenever we get out of here, we tend to party a little bit after the show. But come down, check out the great food. Come get the wings before Haven eats them all. It's a great time. It's awesome. Free pool. during the show hours. So just definitely appreciate everything that these guys have done for us and continue to do for us. We will continue to be here every Monday. And if you can't get out here, make sure you check out the Main Event Sports Show every Saturday, 6 to 7 p.m. only on 104.7 WLOU. And you know what, Haven?
Without any struggle,
There is no progress.
peace.